work we're going to do today represents something that we've been working on for actually about 2 or 3 weeks. A lot of this it's a culmination of some of the thing in the ACE program. This is the Amplio consultant educator program that I do. That's really my senior program. I see, at least I know Susan's in it. I'm not sure I don't remember anybody else being in it. David, are you in it? For some reason, I have this feeling you might be. I just can't remember.
No.
Yeah, I think it's just because I know you from a while back. So I just kind of remember that. But anyway, it's really about how to get good consultants to be better. And it's kind of the cutting edge of our work. But out of it has come this idea of, and I keep going back and forth, do I want to call them thinking patterns or collaboration patterns? I think I'm going to stick with collaboration patterns. You'll see that sometimes it's misknown, but the idea is basically this. And I just wrote a post on this morning. Jerry Weinberg in The Secrets of Consulting talked about the second law of consulting, and he said no matter how it looks, it's always a people problem. Now, I'll admit, I met Jerry once. I took a course from him, and I've read a lot of his books. The guy's brilliant. In fact, I think there are two, I was to say, here are the two most iconic people in the Agile space. Jerry was one, and the other guy's Tom Gilb, although few people know him except you guys, maybe because I talk about him a lot. But I knew what he was saying was true, but it also ran counter to something I also know is true, which is that systems cause most of our problems. And I'll admit, for several years, this bothered me. It was like, well, I know Jerry's right, and I know Deming is right, and what we got a problem here because they sound like they're incompatible with each other. Because systems thinking tells us most of the time problems are due to systems. Deming talks about it as common causes versus special cause. There's common variation versus special variation. And I truly believe in what Deming is saying. And this is why I believe the problem in the Agile space is due to Agile itself, because so many of the problems are common. That means they stem from the system. So I've got these two contradictory beliefs, although I also believe that they're just apparently contradictory, and there is a way to resolve them. I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald said the measure of a mind is keeping two contradictory ideas in your mind at the same time and still being able to function. And I've had a few of these cases in the past about the value of design and the value of you ain't gonna need it when I spent the day with Kent Beck. That took me about 2 weeks to figure that one out. This one took me years, literally, but it happened a while back. So it's important to recognize, yes, it's always a people problem. And yes, the system is causing it. So what is it? And obviously, we need to have some way of resolving it. And I think the resolution is to realize what is it about the people that's causing, what is it about rather the system that's causing the people problem, in a sense, is one way to look at it. And there's one, that's not the one I want, there's a Word document that I want to bring up. Here it is. And I just wrote a post today. You can look at my feed and see it. Ellie Goldratt talks about this a lot, and I'm just going to point out a couple of these quotes that are quite relevant. It's that if you believe reality is complex, you're looking for sophisticated explanation. So when people believe, notice this thought of belief here, people believe. And he's suggesting there are very few elements at the base. I've been talking about this for a very long time. And again, if here's a people issue, it's hard to struggle to find a problem when we believe, notice this is a belief by people, that it doesn't have an answer. And the difficulty is if I'm not sure, again, a people attitude. So it's very interesting that Goldratt has the answer right here in front of us. And I've been quoting this. Well, I kind of came across the choice after I resolved the problem. This might have sped it up quite a lot if I'd read this years ago, because basically Goldratt is saying a comfort zone is less to do with control and more to do with knowledge. So when we talk about how managers are controlling and this happens and that happens and everybody's all upset about it, and I suggest it's because of a lack of understanding. And if your approach doesn't give you understanding, then expect your approach to be unsafe for people. Okay, no play on the safe method. I mean, it's just not safe. If people don't understand, they're not going to feel safe. End of story. And that's a people problem because now they don't quite know where to go. Now, I've seen this other side, which is I've gone into places where I've seen people doing the wrong thing, and you could just change it by changing the system. And sometimes you can say, well, Al, you didn't do anything with the people, and the answer is no, I didn't do anything with the people. The problem was they didn't understand, and they weren't going to resist the change because it was clearly to their benefit. So I'm suggesting what we need to look at is this power of understanding how it tells us what to do, and it eliminates, or not eliminates, it mitigates the people problem of how people react when they don't understand. And it's in this context that I want to introduce these collaboration patterns. And let me explain a little bit about what they are. Now, this is board, not all of you might have this board link. So let me give it to you. And for right now, you can edit it. I'll tell you the long range plan of this board. Yeah, end systems are established by people. That's right. So there's this interaction between the two. But the idea that we don't need theory, we don't need a model, we don't need a system of understanding our system, in a sense, is at the root cause of all this, if you ask me. Now, this board is one right now while I'm creating it and fleshing it out, because I'm still doing that. I don't think it's going to be fleshed out for another week, but I've got the ideas of it where I know how to flesh it out. And what I'm going to show you today, even those of you who are in the ACE program, this will be new. You've not seen this. This is work I've done since our last meeting. There's going to be a board like this that's available to the Amplo community of practice, but it will be available for you to make changes only as comments. Okay, right now I've got it up as editing because I'm in formation and y'all might contribute to it. In the ACE program, this is going to be our platform for extending the Amplo system. And it's going to take a bit of work, but I feel the core part of the work can be done in the next couple of weeks. And this is, of course, voluntary. I mean, I build it at my pace, and some people like to contribute because that's the best way to learn. So let me go through this. Remember, if you're in a Miro board, and the thing looks to the left like this, click this to pull it out, because this is a way of navigating, and it's important to be able to navigate the system. Right. Again, if it says thinking problems, it doesn't here, but if it does, think of collaboration patterns, because these are collaboration. And I suggest reading these 4 chapters. These are all short. These are coming from the book, Being an Effective Coach. They're basically, and I've mentioned these before, to me, these are core things you just have to know if you're a coach. What is it? Why is it that an expert is good? People talk about experience, but experience is a piece of it. The bigger piece is what they look at. How can you use that to talk to people? How do you talk to people who don't understand things? And that we want to look for common cause errors. Okay. So there's also this interesting thing, and some of this I'll admit is personal. I kind of built this map on the left. I realized this is how I've been living a lot of my life. And I've been looking at how to kind of get past this for myself. But I also believe, in other words, there's this notion of survival, competition. I know you'd have a hard time believing I'm a competitive person, but really underneath it all, it's there. And yeah, Susan, I can always count on Susan to get my jokes. One thing I love about her on video. I always look at the negative, have judgments and all this. And these actually translate into these. And this is what I'm really trying to do with people, is you can see the negative. There's nothing really wrong with seeing the negative, but use it to see the opportunity to improve. Instead of survival and competition, get to cooperation, create a sustainable pace, trust. These create confidence and ease, as opposed to these create fear and struggle. Okay. I'm not unique in having these qualities, so I'm not embarrassed about it. It's called being a human being. It takes some energy to stay on this side. Okay. And this is an important piece. So there are a variety of useful concepts. I've quoted these things so many times, By the way, these are always out there to be challenged. This is my take on what's useful. It's not, these aren't laws like you can specify with physics. I do believe underneath it all, first principles are like laws, but they're really made from observations. Okay. So here I talk about it. I'm just going to show you where these things are. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can come here and look. Okay. Now, there are actually, I have this here. There are actually different kinds of matrices. Right now, I've got 4 areas. It says 4. That I guess I'm going to add these 2. So I should say 6. I had these 4, but I do think I'm going to add these 2 as I go. And let me show you what these are. And I'll pull back. And then of course, I'll expand this part and I'll add a column here and a column here. Each of these columns represents a type. So here, just going to go through the summary. I'm trying to identify. So here's a request of me to you. I'm trying to identify the 2-3 dozen most common challenges that people are having, the common cause problems you see all the time. And I had identified a few already, the Agile coach. You can look at these, how they have with product owners and managers, helping the team solve problems, managers working with teams, and improving Agile at scale. And I just did a post, so I realized I need to add these as well. You know, you always see all this stuff about people complaining about this. I've already got one of these up here. In fact, I think I've got a few of these up here already. You know, too many stories being interrupted. Okay, so I've got to add these in here. What causes these? I personally believe when it comes to Scrum or Fall, zombie scrums and feature factories, that this is due to the way Scrum is set up. The system basically is causing these. But how do you create understanding to avoid that? Okay, so when we started this, I had one format for those of you who've been around this one. And I knew one format wasn't going to do it. I was taking a coaching attitude. And there is a set structure for when you're a coach. So some of you may have seen this before. So see, I put the type. I've got 3 types of patterns. Problem solving. No, that's not right. Where do I put the 3 types? Well, I can tell you what they are, but I don't know why I thought I had a list up here. The 3 types of patterns are coaching. In other words, I'm an individual coaching another role. And in their case, I look to see, well, what should they be looking at? Maybe they're not looking at it. What aren't they? What should they not be looking at? Okay, so the ones that are in white are just coaching. The red ones are about, there's a challenge and I'm trying to solve the challenge. Now, it has a lot of similarity because I need to see the cause of it. I need to see concepts. In both cases, I need to see things to consider and how people might react. So there's a lot of similarity in these grids or matrices. We haven't figured out the term for it yet, or even template. Template, grid, matrix. I might use those words interchangeably. There's a lot of similarity because, again, it's what you look at. So you'll notice that this one and this square are virtually the same. How people might react and what you ought to look at are the same. Why? Because those are universal things you should attend to. But these 3 change a little bit based on whether I'm coaching somebody or whether I've got a challenge to solve. Now, there's a third kind, and I've only got one example of it, and I'm still thinking about this a little bit. But that's how to delegate a new practice, how to do a new practice, rather. Like, how do you delegate? Managers haven't been delegating properly. They may not know how to do team estimation. So if I come back up to this top part, you'll see I've identified the ones I've already thought about. And I've identified whether it's solving a challenge, coaching, or adding a new practice. It seems to me those are the 3 types. So I'm going to pause at this moment for questions, first of all. And if you think there's another type of thought process to use, that's why I call these thinking. In other words, sometimes, I've got a problem here. The issue is people aren't doing the work well. I need to educate them. I need to give them understanding. Remember, it's a people problem. I need to give them that understanding. That's what I mean by coaching, because I'm giving them information, conveying information. Sometimes I have a common challenge. I know the solution. They're happy. You just give them a solution. They're real happy to give them a solution. I just need to know what it is. And sometimes I don't necessarily have what I consider to be a problem, but I have a better practice I could be doing. So that's the difference. A problem is something's in my face and I'm solving it. A better practice is just an improvement. Okay, so questions? And also, is there another type, or do you think I can cover everything with these three? Give me a second to consider. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Thomas. Problem-solving mode, the learning mode. Maybe learning is better than coaching. Yeah, I think I like learning better. Thanks for bringing that back. I kind of thought I had different. Diagnose. See, I think we have 4 then. There is a diagnosis mode. I'd forgotten about diagnosis. Okay, so I'm going to have 4. So I'm going to change the, here, let me put this here. Problem, learning, exploration, and adding a practice. I think, see, because you don't just add practices. You know what I mean? It's easy to think you do, but you really don't. You have to look at the people involved. What's their thoughts about it? You can't just say, "Oh, we're going to start doing this." Does that fit with you, Thomas?
Yeah, I'm looking for a good term for new practice. In some ways, it's closest to exploration, but I'm fine with having it as a new category of thinking strategies.
Well, maybe this is an improvement. Yeah, the difference between exploration and improvement is with an improvement, you're saying, I kind of know what to do and how to improve. The thing about the exploration, something I learned, a lot of my work is based on the work of Fernando Flores that I studied with a lot in the late 80s, and brilliant man. And one of the things he talked about was different ways to have conversations. He called them conversations for possibility. And this was incredibly powerful. It was kind of like, I won't say it was agenda-free conversations about solving certain issues. So there was in the background, I guess, an agenda that we want to learn something or we want to solve something. And you could call it brainstorming, except brainstorming's a type of this, but I'd say those are patterns as well. We could put brainstorming exploration in there. Safe to fail experiments could be, how do you run a safe to fail experiment to try something? Because this is something I don't think I've said anywhere. I've written it in my LinkedIn post. But see, I think there are 3 kinds of experiments, and people aren't paying attention to the diversity of experiments. There are things when you have no idea what's going to happen if you do it. I don't run that many of these, but I will admit I've had a few of them. Well, we don't know. Jim Traub, my co-author, once said, sometimes the best practice is a good theory, and you just kind of make up something and you say, well, let's try it. I don't know what's going to happen. Now, I don't do that too much because I have a pretty solid understanding of what's going on now, but I won't say I always do. So there's another kind of experiment. I won't even call it an experiment, although technically it could be, which is I pretty much know what's going on. I've had mostly a validated theory here, and I'm just running it to make sure it's still working. When I do this, when I've got something I've been working on for a while, but I don't have it so validated that I feel it's like a first principle or seriously and known something. Rather, it's like I've got partially validated science, you could say, partially validated model. That is kind of an experiment. Then there's a third kind of experiment, which is I've known something and I've seen it work here, but I've never tried it over here. And I'm not really sure it'll work. I'm pretty sure it'll work because I tend to work on things that are universal, but I don't know for a fact. That's the third kind of experiment. Now, if I'm using theory that I've validated and I've used it before, I don't call that an experiment. A lot of people do, but it isn't. You need feedback because you always need feedback because there might be something you don't see. But in the days when you used to drive to work or something, you didn't tell your significant other, honey, I'm experimenting on my drive to new work, and then do the same drive you've always done. You might experiment by going a different way. Now, that would be an experiment. But doing the same thing you've done over and over again is not an experiment. So this idea of we always run experiments is false and is undermining, and it makes us uncomfortable besides. So I don't think it's a good idea. Okay. Any other comments? That was really helpful, Thomas, as always. Okay, well, then let's spend a little time looking at these. So here's what I'm requesting of you, although it's more of an invitation, really. So it's more of an invitation. I don't have the authority to make a request. By the way, a little coaching tip right there. See, I can invite you all to do something, right? But can I demand you do something? No, you're in a free workshop. Can I request you do something? I can, but then I'm basing it on our relationship, our friendship, or whatever. Really, it's more of an invitation. In other words, you can say yes or no, and there's no consequence. Words are important, and there's it's not being nitpicky. It's people, the body reacts to things. I insist you do this. No. You might start thinking about that and just becoming aware. How do the words demand, request, insist, invite, recommend, suggest, they all have different connotations, and the body picks them up. People don't talk about this a lot. Okay, this is something Fernando talked a lot about, that our world we create in our languaging, how we speak about things, and that when you use certain words, certain reactions happens. That's why I added this section on all these. Consider how people might react to these, also might react to how you propose the things. See, people talk about coaches should be more passive and all that, and I disagree. They just need to be respectful. You talk to somebody and you don't, I demand you do this. No, that would be a bad thing. But to say, hey, let's investigate this. Let's look to see if this is a good idea. Do you want to, guys, do you want to check this out? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with guidance. There's something wrong with demanding. There's a big difference. And we need to pay attention to that. Okay, just a second. This is actually important. I just realized I don't think I have this in my coaching book, or I should say Paul in my coaching book. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to go through each of these. We've got what? Oh, great. We've got 35 minutes. I wasn't sure how long this preface was going to take. I want to go through, they're not all built. I've got a few. Let me show you the navigation method. The main navigation method is to look at the collaboration patterns right here. This pulls you up to the big map, and then remember Agile Coach. Let's go to this one. Okay, so this is a common one. It's a coaching pattern. And why do I call it a coaching problem? It looks like a problem. It is a problem. It's a people problem. It's they don't know something. So we need to teach them something. So we just change this to a learning. This is a learning, where in my case, it's coaching by showing them something. So if I click this, I get the link. I can come down right here. And I'm going to the wrong place. I really wanted to go here. Anyway, I'll fix the links. Like I said, this is in process. So managers and POs are pushing works on the team. I'll make sure I get this right. Oh, I think I just clicked the wrong one, actually. Here we go. Let me pull this down here so I can see it better. Okay. So this is undergoing a little bit of transition. This is a pattern you use, the coach uses. And the way it's going to start out is I put down here what I consider to be concepts that should be known by these people. In other words, here, actually, I just realized this might even be something. I might probably need to have a preface, because I always look at what would an intelligent, motivated person be doing this. So
you probably mean why, right? Why would an intelligent person be doing this?
yes, exactly. Why would an intelligent, motivated person be doing this? Okay, now so I'm going to have to probably I might need to add another one up here. Maybe I put this first on top of these because this is kind of a setup. This isn't quite right. I'm going to have to fix this actually, because these are kind of tending towards solutions. And this is kind of the background, the context. So I probably want to add a contextual thing above everything, because this is basically saying, how do I approach this problem? Do you get what I'm saying? That's really what I start with, and I don't have a place for that. I just realized I need to. How do I approach this problem? Well, the way I approach this problem is I ask myself, why would an intelligent, motivated person be doing this? Now, are they motivated and intelligent? I don't know. But if I presume they aren't, I've lost the gig. I cannot help people I don't think are motivated and intelligent. And when you say, oh, they're not motivated or they don't have the strength or this, I hate that, because immediately whoever's proposing that has undercut any hope for improvement. And they're giving up and they're giving their responsibility away to the people. I take the responsibility. I don't take the blame. But by responsibility means I keep looking. So this is the context. So I have to add a context. You'll feel good. I figured this would happen as we talk. So then I say, okay, well, these are the things that they're basically missing. You know, they don't really understand pull avoids overloading teams because they're doing push. Okay, they don't understand working on too many things causes task switching, again, ineffectiveness. So my goal here as a coach, and I guess this is some of the instructions I do, I need to add the goal. Oh, I hate how they do this. Yeah, see, we want to move these up. In other words, how can I get them to see this? See, so this is intended to be a working tool, not a static reference. In other words, as you talk to people, I'm not suggesting you show this to them, by the way. That's probably not what I would do. This is something more for you to use as a guide, that as you talk to people, you ask yourself, do they understand this? And you might ask questions of them. You don't have to just try to read their minds. I don't know how to do that. I've seen people who look like they know how to do that. That's how I learned this technique, basically, is I knew they didn't know how to read minds because I got intimately involved in the workshops they were present in. I realized, oh, these guys don't know how to read minds. They're just amazingly perceptive. What they pay attention to are what are people looking at. And when you know what people are looking at, sometimes you can tell from the way they talk, and sometimes you just ask them. When you do that, you can see their belief system. It's a reflection. What people do as a basis is a reflection of their belief system. So what we want to do is change their belief system. Now, that's not as hard as it sounds. Everybody says, oh, you can't change people's belief system. Well, some things you can and some things you can't. People in knowledge work have a lot of experience. They have a lot of what I call dormant knowledge. And in this dormant knowledge, they see some of the things you want them to see, but it's dormant. They haven't quite consciously known it. So that's what these two things are about. Okay, what are they looking at? They shouldn't be looking at. Some people think pressure would help. Okay, here's another one. They're afraid if they don't get their work started, it won't get started. So they're going to push it on people. See, what practices could help this? Managing WIP, using a pull system. See, this is giving you this thought process, things to check. What are some practices? Maybe their fear they'll lose bonuses. There are all sorts of things. This is something like, a little catch-all of experience based on theory all blended into one thing. Okay, questions about this. Does this look like it'd be useful?
You mentioned at one point you wouldn't show this to the people you're talking to.
I'm
Why
not
is that?
sure. I didn't say that properly. I wouldn't necessarily show it to people. If you think it's a good idea, show it to them. If you think that they're going to be offended by it, don't show it to them. Just do it in a way where you can say something like, there's this tool I found useful. You want to see what I'm doing? You can make it as an invitation. you have to be careful when you work from things. They may or may not presume. What you could do is do this. This is what I would do if I wasn't sure. I'd say, hey, I've been using this tool to help my thought process. And you know what? I'm not really sure it's correct, but it seems reasonable. Let's talk about it and let's see what you think. See, now you're not putting yourself in as the expert. In fact, I like this. I think maybe that's the standard way to do it. Is it's okay to show the tool, but don't show it as you're the expert. Show it as you've listened to some so-called expert, Al Shalloway, and maybe he's wrong. So let's see what's really true. Now you're on the same side of the fence. Yeah, that's actually nice. I would do it that way, because then you're not claiming expertise. You're not claiming you know more. This is just a tool that's you sometimes find useful. And now you're talking with them in a collaborative manner. It opens up a whole new door. Yeah, I like that. Other questions? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just have a comment here. Like something just jumped up at me when looking at this and hearing your comments. Design thinking sort of seems like something that could go along with this. Basically, there is the discovery of the problem. Is that a real problem or not? And then after that, this is part maybe of the definition, and then designing the solution. So I was thinking, is there a way to basically kind of use both of them? Because one thing that I'm feeling might be missing here is the validation step of this problem that I'm choosing, and the prioritization of the problem. Is it the right thing that I should tackle at the beginning?
Okay, well, you've got three things here. First of all, I would say, yes, this is somewhat consistent with design thinking, and I would definitely use it. But I'm not trying to put this into the design thinking model for a couple of reasons. I have a lot of things here that are not in the design thinking model. And but what you're saying is true. So as far as the prioritization happens before this. In other words, you've decided this is an issue and you're looking at it. So this is not talking about prioritization. In the ACE program, we talk about how a consultant engages, and the prioritization would be involved in that. In other words, there's a model in the ACE program where we call it the Amplio GPS, where we look to see what, we do some analysis of what's needed, and we come up with an improvement backlog, okay, where these are different things. So that's good, but that's not what this is. This is actually could be used after you've done this, or you just started an engagement and you see what things are. So that's good. But should have a benefit, the why, and I should have a validation in here. Those are good things to add. So I'll do that. I want you to be clear, and this is partly, it's just an acknowledgement. It's kind of obvious. I'm not saying anything different, that this is cutting new ground. This is different than what I've seen. Now people say, oh, this is like the Scrum plop and all that. And I say, no, it's not really. Because in Scrum plop, there's no model underneath it all. It's just saying, here's a problem, here's different ways to solve it. Each one of these is based on this theory that there's a model under here you can use, and you could refine the model as you go. See, I've got the model here, mostly, these useful concepts. And I can see already, I saw this before, but I haven't done anything. I should break this down into little stories so they can be brought down into here quickly. Right now, you got to take text over it. But thanks, Hitcham. You're absolutely right. There's a parallel here. I'm trying to solve a problem. Okay, one last thing. I'm going to go to the second tech. Remember, we have 3 grids. Or maybe there'll be 4. But I've only got 3 I've done anything with. So I'm going to show you 2 more. But I want to point out something else. See, I totally disagree with that purposely incomplete is anything good. It's like having a purposely incomplete toolbox because I don't use metric a lot. And then when I use metric, oh my God, where's metric? Oh, I can't get this job done. It's silly. On the other hand, I don't want, when I go into my garage, have this toolbox that's 300 pounds of every tool possible, and I can't use it because I'm being overwhelmed. So there's this dilemma. It's not, I want a small toolbox. I want a toolbox that's appropriate when I need it and is as small maybe as I need, but I want the right stuff at the right time. So the idea here is, how do we build? And this is what I envision. Imagine a year, 2 years from now, when we've looked at all the issues that are common, and we prioritize them by most frequent at the top. They're most frequent. Now, I actually believe there's probably only going to be, even though we keep adding them, we've now got 2 more types. I don't think any one of these columns is going to have more than 10 things in it. I think any one of these columns, 10 things cover pretty much 80, 90% of the space out there. It looks overwhelming when we're in it. It looks, oh my God, there's so much here. There've got to be thousands of problems. But the reality is, no, there are dozens of problems. That's a big difference. And they interact with each other. So we get overwhelmed. Remember what Goldratt said. If we think it's complex, we look for sophisticated explanations. Most of us give up soon. So that's not the approach. But this can build it. This is my platform for Amplio to expand. Anyway, let's go to another kind of problem. Let's come up here. How to delegate. Oh, I haven't done this one yet. Okay, here's a challenge. This is a challenge. Incomplete stories at the end of a sprint. Now, this one's a little different. So here I have common causes. I have what are people looking at that they shouldn't. Things, this one down here are the same. I need the same thing. How do I validate this? What's the benefit of it? You know, how important is it? What practices might help solve these problems? And useful concepts. So there's quite a few similarities here. In fact, the only real difference is this upper left one. Because it's like, what's the cause of it? In this case, I've got a problem. What's the cause of the problem? It's not just people's attitudes, although I have to attend to that. So incomplete stories, you know, it could be we planned too many, could be we misestimated, could be there's too much WIP, could be a variety of things, and you can add some here. People will react in different ways. One way I've seen people react is if you tell them that the reason you have unfinished stories at the end of the sprint is your sprints are too long. It's counterintuitive to people, but it's true. If you plan half the work and do it in half the time and all that, you'll have half the number of carryover. That alone is a savings. I once made a graphic of this, but I lost it. But it's quite clear when you understand flow, the best way to stop carryover is not to have larger sprints, but is to have smaller sprints. And when people understand this, it gets clear and you can do something. Okay, so this is the example of solving a problem. Any questions? Okay. Improvement patterns. I don't have many of these here, but I will have quite a few because there are quite a few. It's really funny. Agile is about learning. I could argue that virtually any framework that is pretty much doing what it was doing 2 years ago is not learning sufficiently to be called agile. A lot of agile people would say, oh yeah, SAFE's like this. And I would say, actually, the poster child for a project that doesn't learn is Scrum. It's basically unchanged, except it's been weakened, make it more generic. Scrum is not a learning. Yeah, it got retrospections, it's got daily scrums, but it doesn't question itself. You've got to be questioning yourself all the time. Well, maybe not all the time. That would be too much. Some things gets reasonably known, but if you have anything that's sacrosanct, you have a religion, not a framework. Anyway, how to do a new practice. Okay, now I haven't filled this one in. One new practice is delegation, because most managers don't know how to delegate. This, by the way, is not new to Amplio by any means. I'll tell you where I pull it from. I pull it from Deming. I pull it from the Toyota production system. And I pull it from Don Reinertsen. Reinertsen makes it very clear how you do this. And he does it in a better way. He does it in his book, Principles of Product Development Flow. when he talks about the way the 777 was done, where he said, if you're going to delegate, you got to make sure the people you're delegating to have the information to make proper decisions. And it's not all about the team. It could be a holistic view of things. So do they know that? If they don't, they're going to make bad decisions, and that's on you, the manager, not the teams. How teams work across teams, how you build a product when there are lots of people involved. This is not talked about anywhere as far as I can tell. SAFE does talk a little bit about Reinertsen, but they don't pull out the 777 management. In fact, I think they go crazy and talk about, I forget his name. It's good stuff, but you don't just manage well by free form stuff. So they go a little soft in the management area, in my opinion. Okay, so those are the three types. I've got to come up with the fourth one, thanks to Thomas. He's always creating extra work for me. That's a joke. I appreciate it. Okay, exploration mode. I haven't thought about this too much. I did mention it. I know a couple of them that I would consider. But in exploration, I'll probably try to pull in the evaporating cloud by Goldratt as part of TOC, because the evaporating cloud is a way to resolve conflict, and it does it in a really cool way. And it is kind of an exploration. Also, the future condition. There's a lot of stuff in TOC that, if you haven't gone beyond the goal or the choice, you may not know of, but it's amazing system. Okay, so I'm going to stop presentation just to ask people questions. How does this work? Or spend some time looking at these top ones here. Add to them. Maybe while you're doing that, I'll add this. Think about it, ask me questions. You don't have to think through the questions. If you've got something you're not certain about, say, Al, I'm not certain about this, and ask that. Where do you want me to elaborate on? Or just keep reading, that's fine too.
I have a question, not sure if it's covered somewhere, but the situation where you have more than one agile coach, not necessarily with that designation, but more than one person filling the role.
You mean on a team, or for the whole
Uh,
organization, or just
for
multiple coaches? Okay, so that's
multiple
not a great question. How do coaches work together? In fact, this is a really good question. Yeah, this is why I said this is the starting point. This is my invitation to you. Thank you for accepting it, to give me more opening. So one of the things is I've actually been realizing what I want to talk about is coaches roles, coaching by roles with other roles. So we must add the coach to coach. That'll be a particular topic. I might need to reorganize these four main categories I have. Let's see, they're not four, these six. In other words, I might want to have a generic one, coaches, challenges. I just might have that as another area. I'm trying to do an affinity mapping. So coach to coach is an important one. And I find it's a sensitive one, because coaches tend to be strongly opinionated, other than myself anyway. The problem with coaches, there are two problems, as far as I see, beside the fact that obviously nobody knows everything. Sometimes there is an attachment, which you would expect, because what's his name? I'll tell you the quote. I can't remember his name at the moment. It's hard to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. So challenging coaches can be very unsafe. And most people haven't gone through the degrees of being unsafe to feel comfortable with being challenged. I have. An advantage of having been the CEO of Net Objectives, along with my commitment to learn, I went through several sequences where my entire company, at least for a moment, I thought all their knowledge was obviated. When we went from Scrum to Kanban, it was like, oh my God. And that was only one of several. And after a while, I realized, it's just, if you're an intelligent person, you can learn things. So coach to coach is a good one. Yeah. I'll add that. Now I've got to figure out the affinity mapping. I don't want it to be, I think what I might do is this, is have a role to role. So a coach, agile coach to product owners, agile coach to managers, agile coach to other coaches. Makes sense. See, I started with this whole thing being the agile coach perspective. In other words, if you're a coach, how do you do this? And that's why these came up front. But then I realized, wait a moment, managers, and this is going to run counter to a lot of what you hear in the LinkedIn space. Virtually every significant, massive, successful change I've been involved in was led by managers. And I mean led by managers. I don't mean facilitated or created the space. They often decided what to do because the issue in the organization was that the changing the system, and usually they were the only ones who had the perspective or the ability to change it. This is one of Deming's 14 profound points. Is management is responsible for the system. Now, they don't do it willy-nilly. In every case, I had them make the decisions based on the benefit of the teams involved. In every case, the teams immediately said, oh, this is a great idea. Because it gave them a way to work together they didn't have before. So that's a little different, though, than a coach, because he's a different level of authority. So yeah, I'm going to add to coaches here. I'll add that. Good. So I don't have to expand it to 6. How to engage with people regarding change. There's some rules there to know. How to diagnose. That's good. And adding, let's see. Well, Thomas, would you say exploration and practice, adding a practice are the same? They might be.
Yeah.
They might be close enough. Sorry.
We talked about that earlier regarding the exploration versus improvement, right? I think they're very closely related, and I think fewer categories is probably better, just to keep the cognitive.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So explore. What if we called it exploration for improvement or something? And then I'll tell you what I like about this. I'm agreeing with you. What I like about this is then you could have, hey, here's a practice. Let's consider it. That's a kind of exploration. So it is a gradient.
Yeah, and you'd often said that you wanted Amplio to be such that it's collaborative and explorative, right? In that,
yeah, totally.
We jointly discover better ways of doing things and solving problems. And
yeah, no, so, I like it. I appreciate you sticking with this. Yeah,
and I just wanted to add a bit of a color code legend, if you will, because the grids below are white and pink, or
yeah, I was trying to do that, but this is good. That's right. I hadn't gone through everything, but you're right. Absolutely. Okay, well, this is here was the test I had for today. This is what I was wanting to accomplish today. One was I was wanting to see if this looked like a model that we could use to build an approach. So if you're a coach, you can come in and gain a lot of experience almost immediately by looking at this. The other one is to feel like this is something we could build and be this platform. See, I'm working on the Amplio system myself, but I think one other way to work on it is to come up with, is there a way to navigate through the dozens and not hundreds? This is important. This is what gets me about the lack of self-reflection on LinkedIn. I would be willing to bet money. I'm not usually a betting person, but I would bet this. If you picked 100 LinkedIn posts at random and then culled out those that didn't have anything to do with the problem in Agile, because there are some people who aren't talking about Agile on LinkedIn, obviously. And then you were to look at those, and then look at those that were related to the standard Agile. And I'm going to pick on Scrum because Scrum's the one that claims empiricism is enough, purposely incomplete is okay, and that we're dealing in complex adaptive systems. What bothers me about that is it's gotten embedded in our thought process. This is the common knowledge that's there. I would bet that if you then affinity mapped whatever was left, so maybe start with 500, call all those out, you're down to a couple hundred. I would bet more than half of them could be attributed down to a few dozen patterns. So make it even 1,000 things. It's the same problems over and over and over again. And underneath it all, almost all the solutions provided is how do you motivate people? How do you get them these qualities? It's all about the people. Oh, wait a moment, Al, you started this out saying it was a people problem. Yes, I did. But it's the system the people are in is causing the people problem. And if you keep blaming the people, you're not going to change the system. And this is why so many Agile coaches are ineffective. So many Scrum Masters are ineffective. And after talking to y'all, my question is this: do you concur with what I'm saying? See, because this means we have to change this. And that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of Pareto distribution where a large majority, 80–90% of all the problems that, as you said, could be evidenced by a random sampling of LinkedIn posts in that space can be explained by 20% or less of the root causes.
Yeah. It's Pareto.
And
It's the Pareto analysis.
I would think
absolutely.
A few dozen were captured nicely.
Yeah, I don't think this is complete, but I'll tell you, as I step and I think about it, it doesn't feel like, it feels like I'm narrowing in on the 20/80, the 20% that's causing most of the problem. Not like, oh my God, here's another one. Oh, here's another one. I don't get that. I get, oh yeah, it's getting harder to find new ones. And I know, here's the interesting thing. I know there are special cases, or rather things that aren't as common, but caused by the system. But then what you have there is this thought process. Now you've honed the thought process to solve it even when it's not on the board. And if it doesn't happen that often, we'll just put it down under the line and we could keep adding to it. And then a table of contents. So we have like an Amplio wiki kind of thing, or a chat GPT it can turn into. Okay, I'm going to take the last couple, anything else, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes for just kind of an ad. So delay if you don't want the end. Okay.
So just maybe one idea that I just had, would this cover, what if the problem is the Agile coach?
Well, this hopefully, so one of the things that we need to do, and we talk about this in our coaching book, how can you improve? Okay. So that's such a great question. So I think what I'll do, not as part of these, well, there could be self-improvement patterns, right? So maybe I'll add some here. How to see if you're dogmatic. I won't say it that way, but how to look, how to be self-reflective. I'll add those in there. That's great. Couldn't we add those and see how do you do that? What do you look for? You say this, but then you do this. Are you paying attention to systems thinking? Okay. Yeah, I love it. So let me test something here. And I mean, is ineffective, I should say, not they're a bad person. Okay, so notice we just added a couple of things here. How hard would it be? How confusing would it be to add this in here? Not at all. It fits under the learning, the reflective. We add to it. We use the same ideas. Do you see how this thing just expands, but it doesn't become unmanageable? This is very important. This is not I'm defending myself. No, this is a design here. It's designed to add issues like this so you can navigate them. At the top, you have a few things. You could also do searches. You could feed this into Chat GPT and query on it with AI. I mean, we haven't got to that point yet, but we will. The point is this thing can grow. So when you find questions aren't there, okay, so let me tell you how I want to use this. This will be in another week or two that this happens. This is going to be open to all of you in the Agile community of practice to make comments. Right now, you can add things if you like. I'm going to shut it down in a week once I've got it fleshed out, where you can still see it, but it'll be comment only. And it will be available to anybody in the ACOP plus any of my paid for workshops. Now, I have 2 paid for workshops now and a 3rd one coming, and a 4th one I can do on demand. I have one starting in about 2 weeks called the Amplio Value Coach. And if you're kind of a coach, team coach level, I highly recommend it. It's ridiculously inexpensive at $5.95 for basically 14 hours of live instruction and 22 hours of doctors in sessions over a 6-month period. The live instruction for the workshop happens in the first month or so, a couple of months, so you get that done. And if you want to be a better coach, this is the key. You know, if you're worried about, if you're a scrum master, if you're worried about what's going to happen, this will put you head and shoulders above everybody else. Some of you, a couple of people have come in. We have now more people in the ACE program, the Amplio Consultant Educators program. And this is really for how do good consultants become better consultants. But actually, it's open for coaches too, because I've got a lot of background information and things like that. It's only $150 a month or $1,500 for the year. Now, the reason I'm low price, because this is absurdly priced if you look at it from the way the pricing is, except I view it the other way around. I view with remote training, low-cost live training is possible, and I think other training is overpriced, not that I'm underpriced. So I don't really think it's underpriced. It's reasonable. I can make a living with this if I get enough people, and I think I will. I make this point because the price we pay for training that's ineffective to begin with is another big part of our problem, because people are not properly trained. This idea that you can give people a couple days or read a guide and then figure it out is ludicrous, has no evidence for it, has evidence just against it, but nobody's willing to check it out. Okay, in January, I'm going to unveil the Amplio Business Agility Workshop. I unveiled it, but then pulled it back. I just didn't want the stress. And I also have an Amplio Development Masterclass, which is for the team level. If you're interested, send me an email, contact me on LinkedIn. Well, you know how to get a hold of me. We're building a community here. The ACE program, anybody who's in any paying workshop of mine will be able to help build this. And if you're just in the ACOP, you'll get to use it. So that's not bad. But in a little bit while, I'm going to have the people who I'm really training to be the cutting edge with me. Okay, how about this? Exactly 9 o'clock. We good? Any questions? I'm done, basically. I'll have this up on live by the end of today. And thanks for the feedback. Great feedback. This expands. This is the way I wanted it. But what we're proving is the terminology needs to change, but the structure is working with some modification. But hey, you never get it right the first time. At least I've never been able to get it right the first time. And I'm not bad, but sometimes I'm slow. Take care. Stay safe.